Hello everyone, this is Crota giving you Game 3 in a best of 3 series matchup between Mouz, Hasu, and Jimpo. Game 1 and Game 2 were both pretty interesting. Game 1 more of a macro fest, Game 2 more of a strategy fest, and a well-timed push coming in from Jimpo. Hasu on this map has spawned on the south side as the blue Protoss player. Meanwhile, Jimpo spawned on the north side as the red Terran. So Terran versus Protoss, once again, best of 3 matchup. Really curious as to how this game plays out. Now, in my discussions at BlizzCon with Dustin Browder and David Kim, they had said that they had started to feel that a lot of Protoss versus Terran matchups were about 50-50 in that the Terran player seemed to have an advantage during the early portion of the game, but somehow the Protoss player had a very, very strong advantage at the end of the game, and that seems to be the case in a lot of the replays I've been seeing recently. And if the Terran player is able to deal a lot of damage early on, then they are able to take that advantage into the late game and be able to win it. However, if the Protoss player is able to defend and hold off for just a little bit longer, able to get Colossi and Psystorm, then there is not much that the Terran player can do in order to counter it. We now see one probe now trying to come in as well. Both sides fighting, dealing damage back and forth to each other, and now that probe able to back off in just a moment. We now see a refinery being placed down by that SCV, a very early probe scout in this base, as this is a very small map and both sides know where exactly the other player spawned. This one probe now trying to fight back, able to deal some damage towards that SCV once again, and that probe down to 19 out of 20 hit points. We also see this SCV making sure that there is no proxy play coming into this base, as this probe now just continues to wander around on the inside of this base. So doing a great job so far. So Jimpo just continuing to wander around inside his base, and now we should probably see a Marine being trained up in just a moment, in addition to upgrading to an orbital command center. And now with that orbital command center in play, we will be able to see mules called out of the sky and giving Jimpo a little bit more of an economic catch-up compared to the chrono boosted Protoss. Taking a look into the base, Hasu is getting that cybernetics core, does have that standard assimilator in play, and now most likely will be going for that robotics facility in order to get observers and figure out exactly what the Terran player is doing. Interesting thing to note, we have Hasu hiding over here in the dark. So Jimpo does not see that there is still a probe inside his base, and if a pylon is placed here or here, we will see units being warped in very, very quickly, and Jimpo will be forced to deal with 2 to 3 warp gates, warping units straight into his base. We now see one Zealot currently being chrono boosted, and now a Stalker also being trained up as well, as the Zealot now going to hold into this position here and being able to fend off against that one SCV. We do see 2 Marines, and now going into a fast command center by Jimpo, and very nicely done. Hasu getting all the information he needs, able to see that fast command center, and now Jimpo just has to give a little bit of a sigh as this one probe now just wandering around the inside. Will Jimpo cancel this? No. Jimpo is not canceling this command center, so he will be going more for an economic game, as we see the Stalker and the Zealot responding to that early expansion attempt before the 5-minute mark, and now moving out with the Zealot and the Stalker. So we now see one SCV continuing to move around. There's only 2 Marines, and now we see 4 Marines now being trained, so it's going to be 4 Marines versus a Zealot and a Stalker. I believe the Zealot and the Stalker have a little bit of an advantage if it wasn't for this high ground location here. So these 4 Marines will be able to start attacking against that Stalker before that Stalker is able to start attacking against the Zealot. Zealot now is going to lead the way as 6 Marines start dealing damage towards that Zealot, now trying to pull back. Oh, unable to micro that one Marine back out of there, as that Stalker using its superior range and its superior walking speed in order to just kite some of those units. Those 5 Marines just sitting on that high ground now, as we see a Nexus also being placed down here by Hasu. So Hasu now getting that one Nexus in play, will be able to mine from 16 minerals, as well as his command center now upgrading to an orbital command, will be able to lift off down over here and then be able to call down mules pretty instantaneously. Taking a look at the unit combination, 22 Harvesters for the Terran player, 27 probes for Hasu, 2 Stalkers, 1 Zealot. So both sides pretty much with skeleton armies so far. One SCV able to get sight of this Nexus now, as this one SCV now coming off into this location, trying to get as much information as possible. We'll see the 3 additional gateways currently being built. So Hasu is going into more of an aggressive playstyle, trying to be able to spend up all of his minerals. Off of 3 warp gates and one robotics facility, he will be able to support those fairly easily. With Stalkers now trying to make their way. We do see 1 Marauder, however, I do not believe the Marauder has a concussive shell upgrade yet. No, does not have the concussive shell upgrades, so will not be able to chase down those Stalkers very easily, especially when they do not have Stim Pack either. Immortals now being trained up by Hasu. So Hasu with Immortals getting very, very strong indeed. Those Immortals will be popping out in just a moment and will be able to deal a fair amount of damage towards those Marauders. However, there are a decent number of Marines in order to deplete those hardened shields of that Immortal. Back over here, Marines now making their way as well. 4 Marines, and all of this off of 3 racks production, and now it looks as though it's going to be mass tier 1, so Marines, Marauders, and at some point Medivacs, so just massive MMM. Both of these players have changed up their strategies in all 3 games, going for a fast tech, fast expansion. Hasu pretty much staying true to his build so far. However, with that robotics facility, he will be able to get a robotics support bay or robotics bay very easily, and then get Colossi in a hurry. As soon as those Colossi come out, these Marines will get sliced up very quickly. We do see the combat shield nearing completion. However, if he engages without that combat shield, that is going to be a very, very sad sight indeed. Now trying to pull away. Will he be able to pull back in time, trying to fight back against some of those units? Stalkers are trying to engage, and now in comes 1 force field, able to pick off, and now in comes that Stim Pack. So Stim Pack now kiting some of those units, doing a very, very strong job there. And however, the combat shield now being completed as well, able to deal a lot of damage across more and more of those units. Army wise, both sides fairly even. Stalkers now giving chase. I do not believe the Marauders have that concussive shell yet. No, they do not have concussive shells. Stalkers continuing to just pick off more and more of those units as Marines are able to deal so much damage. However, not going to be worth it, realizing that those Stalkers would have been able to engage. Now trying to take down another Zealot able to survive with 8 hit points. Army-wise, Jimpo sitting on a decent number of Marauders and Marines here, finally getting that concussive shell, and now Colossus has been trained. So the Colossus with that robotics bay now joining in on that production. So this is going to be a 3-gate with a Colossus, and I'm a little curious as to the economy of Hasu. Hasu should be able to get more production buildings. And very, very quickly, you can see that Hasu is queuing up a lot of probes, which is something that you rarely see coming in from a Protoss player. He should probably get down some additional gateways, as he will not be able to spend the amount of minerals that he has in just a moment. So we do see the robotics facility now being chrono boosted with nothing inside it, and now another group of Marauders and Marines. We see the starport finally coming in as well. However, that starport is not going to be able to deal or be able to produce any units very, very quickly, especially as that Colossus now comes in. Very, very smart of Hasu to try to hide that Colossus in the backside of this army, making it so that if those Marines and Marauders try to engage, force fields from these sentries coupled with the Colossus grouping those units together would have dealt a lot of damage. We now see a reactor being placed down over here. So the reactor, in addition to a starport, the reactor time and the starport time has the same build time. So that starport will be able to lift off in just a second, and then that factory will lift off, opening up room for that reactor, and now be able to produce either double Medivacs or double Vikings. We'll see what's going to be trained up at double Vikings, as we now have that extended thermal lance research currently being upgraded. Marines now trying to use that Stim Pack, trying to head all the way home. Will it be enough? Army-wise, things are not looking good. And Jimpo does have a decent-sized mineral army, but his gas army is suffering severely. Double Vikings now being trained up, and at this point I believe Hasu will take an additional expansion, perhaps expanding into this location here, and then, or even into this location. However, it is much more dangerous for a Protoss player to try to grab this high yield mineral expansion. And now as this game continues, I'm thinking that Hasu is just going to get the stronger and stronger advantage. Now that he has 3 or 4 Colossi, he will then be able to transition into the Twilight Council, get some High Templar, and it will be very difficult for the Terran player, for Jimpo, to be able to counter both High Templar and Colossi, since the most that he really has is a mass infantry army right now. Production wise, you can see the production tab, a lot of units still being trained, extended thermal lance research nearing completion, as well as we now have 4 Vikings in the air, 4 Vikings to try to counter the 3 Colossi. that are currently in the game, and now a second observer being trained up as well. We can see that this is a very heavy, we see a large amount of gas that Hasu is sitting on. Hasu should be getting the Twilight Council at some point, since he has so much additional gas that those High Templars would be able to get a lot dealt, or a lot of damage dealt. We now see a factory now flying across, and will be able to come into this position in just a moment. That factory, however, will not be able to land, as this factory will be able to quickly spot this one nexus here and realizes that it cannot land. One Marine trying to activate a Xel'Naga watchtower, quickly going to get taken down there. Down it goes, as adding to the losses. So Jimpo could try to place down a factory here, build up some siege tanks, get some siege tech, and start blasting away into this location, trying to limit the number of expansions that he has. We do see one observer in the air over here gaining sight, and now we have these Vikings. The Vikings were trying to get some damage across those Colossi, but the Colossi are being very safe and smart, not trying to engage, and this is going to be a very bad sight indeed, as we have now medevacs and Marines and Marauders trying to push Colossi with that extended thermal lance range, and now we have the Vikings in the air. In come those force fields that I was talking about earlier, and mass sentries with force fields dealing so much damage, picking apart this army very easily. The Vikings now trying to deal more damage against those Colossi. However, there are not enough Vikings, perhaps enough to take on another one, but the sheer number of stalkers on the ground, and the army fight is not looking well for Jimpo. Jimpo now being forced to retreat, as the Colossi are taking down their own force fields there. One medevac has been shot down by those stalkers with faster legs than those jetpacks of those medevacs. So now Marauders and Marines down over here. Will they be able to hold off this attack? It looks like they will be able to, as Hasu does not want to engage at this stage in the game. Vikings moving out will be able to finally take down that one scouting observer there. So both players will be playing a little bit in the dark. Now we see stalkers on the ground. Do the stalkers see the factory? Yeah, they do in fact see that factory. Not quite sure what Hasu really plans to do, getting some additional photon cannons in this position. And now Hasu can essentially warp in almost units anywhere across the map production-wise. I'm still surprised that we do not see a Templar Archives at this stage in the game. Stalkers now making their way over. Factory will get shot down very quickly. Is he going to put down another starport? Yes, puts down a second starport just in time before that factory gets taken down, as Terran very rarely goes mech now besides Thor's in order to deal damage. And finally, we see the Psionic Storm joining in on this fight. There was that Twilight Council that I've been looking for, and there's that Templar Archive. So Hasu hiding his tech at his natural expansion, chrono boosting the Templar Archives in order to get more and more gas. We should be seeing some High Templars being warped in as well in order to get some of that early energy, in order to be able to just cast Psystorm very effectively. Taking a look, we have what, three High Templar down in this position. Stay tuned for part 2 of this replay between Hasu and Jimpo here in the Xel'Naga Caverns.
Take a